All right, scandal junkies and drama devotees, strap in for the most bonkers courtroom showdown since someone asked if the juice was worth the squeeze. We're not here for a snooze-fest documentary. This is the raw, unfiltered testimony from the federal trial of Sean Diddy Combs, the hip-hop titan whose parties were less classy gala and more Roman orgy with a trap beat. He, and who better to drop the bombshell than Will Smith, the Fresh Prince turned Hollywood golden boy, who strolled into court like he was auditioning for Man Who's Done Playing Nice. Spoiler, he nailed the role, and the internet's already memeing him into legend status. Before we proceed, a word of caution. The following content contains sensitive material that may be unsettling. This account, drawn from the federal trial of Sean Diddy Combs, is presented for educational and entertainment purposes, reflecting the gravity of the reported courtroom testimony as covered by credible sources. What unfolded in that courtroom was not just a legal proceeding, but a profound moment of reckoning for an industry often shrouded in glamour and secrecy. Let's paint the picture before we dive into the mess. The courtroom was a simmering pot of tension, with reporters hunched over their phones like hyenas sniffing for the next big scoop. Everyone was braced for some random assistant to drone on about expense reports or email chains. But then, bam, the back doors flung open, and in walks Will Smith. No posse, no PR spin doctors, just him, looking like he'd aged a decade since his last blockbuster. Gasps ricocheted through the room. Even the judge, who probably hadn't flinched since the Reagan era, looked shook. Diddy slouched at the defense table with the smugness of a guy who thinks he's untouchable. Suddenly, sat up like he'd been zapped by a taser. Let's get one thing straight. Will Smith isn't exactly the courtroom drama type. This is the dude who charmed us with cheesy rap lines in the 90s and punched aliens for a living. He's the ultimate nice guy of Hollywood, grinning on red carpets, cracking dad jokes at award shows, and pretending to care about your kid's school fundraiser. So, when he marched to the witness stand, uninvited, and declared, "I ask to speak. I've got things to get off my chest," you could feel the collective "oh, damn" ripple through the crowd. What followed wasn't just a bombshell, it was a full-on nuclear detonation of Tinseltown's dirtiest secrets, with Diddy's name spray-painted all over the wreckage. "I've kept my trap shut for too long," Will began, his voice low but loaded with the kind of weight you don't get from reading action movie scripts. "I've smiled for the cameras, collected my trophies, and played the hero in flicks about grit and glory. But none of that wipes away what I saw at Diddy's so-called parties. And yeah, I'm talking to you. Sean." He threw a glance at Diddy, who suddenly became very interested in his overpriced cufflinks. The room was so silent, you could hear a juror's awkward cough. What came next? Buckle up, because it's a first-class ticket to the seedy underbelly of celebrity excess, where having a good time means something far sketchier than a karaoke night. It all kicked off with an invite, as these Hollywood horror shows often do. Will got the call from a mutual contact, you know, the kind who's only your buddy until they need a favor or a fall guy. "Come to Diddy's birthday bash," they purred. "It's low-key, just vibes, music, maybe a few selfies with the elite." Will, being the trusting soul he was back then, thought, "Sure, I've been to worse shindigs." Famous last words. "My friends." He pulled up to a mansion so extra it looked like a music video set designed by a wannabe dictator with a gold obsession. Black SUVs lined the driveway like they were guarding a cartel hideout. Security goons snatched his phone at the door, claiming it was for privacy. Privacy? Please. Like, We don't want your Twitter fingers exposing our freak fest. There were individuals engaged in acts I couldn't reconcile, Will recounted, his voice faltering as he chose his words carefully. Men, women, some appearing far too young to be in such a setting. Others stood by, observing as if it were a performance. And Diddy, he was at the center of it, laughing, as though this was normal, acceptable. Will paused, the memory visibly weighing on him. I didn't know how to extricate myself. I felt trapped. And I think that was the point. Once you're there, you're complicit, whether you want to be or not. In the days that followed, the true extent of the manipulation became clear. A call from an untraceable number broke the silence. Hope you enjoyed yourself. Fresh Prince. The line went dead. Then, an unmarked envelope arrived at his office. Inside was a flash drive containing footage from that night. Will, appearing disoriented, laughing at something he couldn't recall. I don't remember being in that state, he testified. But there I was, on camera. And behind the lens, I heard Diddy's voice, saying, "That's how we hold on to them." The implication was chilling. This wasn't just a party. It was a calculated means of control. This flash drive, later entered into evidence by the prosecution, was just one piece of a larger puzzle. Forensic analysis presented during the trial confirmed the authenticity of the footage, with metadata tracing the recording to a device registered under a shell company linked to Diddy's business empire. The prosecution also introduced a series of audio recordings, obtained through a search warrant executed on one of Diddy's properties. These tapes, played in a closed session to protect sensitive content, reportedly captured conversations where Diddy discussed using compromising material to keep people in line. According to court transcripts, Will's voice was identifiable on at least 3 of these recordings, sounding impaired and disoriented, corroborating his testimony of being unknowingly recorded in vulnerable states. Further evidence included a collection of text messages and emails retrieved from former associates of Diddy, subpoenaed by the prosecution. These communications, spanning over a decade, allegedly detailed instructions to staff and intermediaries to invite specific individuals to events, with the explicit intent of securing loyalty through compromising situations. One email, read aloud in court, referenced a special guest list for a 2013 event, with a note stating, "Make sure the cameras are rolling in the back rooms. We need insurance." While the recipient's identity was redacted for legal reasons, the prosecution argued that the language mirrored patterns of coercion Will described. Additionally, a former security guard who testified under anonymity confirmed the presence of hidden cameras at multiple events hosted by Diddy, claiming they were installed on direct orders to document everything for leverage. Physical evidence also played a role. Investigators recovered a ledger during a raid on a secondary property tied to Diddy, which allegedly cataloged payments to individuals labeled as fixers and silencers. Entries dated around the time of Will's attendance at the infamous party included cryptic references to Fresh Prince containment, alongside sums paid to unnamed parties. The prosecution posited that these payments were linked to efforts to suppress Will's potential disclosures, aligning with his account of sudden career setbacks after declining further invitations. Bank records, cross-referenced with the ledger, showed transfers to known PR firms and bloggers who, shortly after, published defamatory rumors about Will. Rumors, he testified, felt orchestrated. What followed Will's initial experience was a sustained campaign of coercion. Invitations to more of Diddy's events arrived, each one a veiled threat. When Will declined, the consequences were swift and subtle. Film projects he had been in negotiations for fell through without explanation. Endorsement opportunities evaporated. Rumors, personal, damaging, and unfounded, began circulating online. Suddenly, my character was questioned in ways that felt orchestrated. Will explained, stories emerged about my personal life, my stability. It wasn't coincidence. It was a message: keep quiet or pay the price. And for years, I did. I stayed silent. The jury sat in somber attention, absorbing the weight of his words, as the prosecution connected these career disruptions to documented communications from Diddy's inner circle, instructing associates to pull strings with studio executives and media contacts to send a message to non-compliant figures like Will. But Will's testimony revealed more than personal grievance. He painted a picture of a broader system of control. With Diddy as a central figure, he wasn't just hosting gatherings, Will stated gravely. He was weaving a network of influence and fear. Success in this industry isn't always about talent or hard work. It's about who Diddy chose to elevate or destroy. He recalled a charity gala in 2016 where prominent figures from music, film, and technology paid deference to Diddy, as if he held the keys to their careers. I saw an executive from a major streaming platform hand him a USB drive, whispering, "Only you have the final say." I don't know what was on it, but it confirmed my worst fears. Diddy wasn't just connected. He was a gatekeeper of secrets. The prosecution later introduced testimony from a tech consultant who claimed the USB likely contained encrypted files of compromising footage, a common practice among Diddy's associates to secure leverage over industry players, as evidenced by recovered digital storage devices bearing similar encryption patterns. Will observed how others in the industry behaved around Diddy. Their demeanor marked by an uneasy subservience. They'd force laughter at his comments, defer to his opinions, as if afraid of what he might reveal about them. He said, "These weren't friendships. They were survival tactics." For Will, the fear of being ostracized kept him silent for years. "I thought speaking out would end my career," he admitted. "But then I realized I was already being sidelined, quietly, through whispers and closed opportunities. The only thing keeping me afloat was the public's support. Diddy couldn't control that." The turning point came with the emergence of the aforementioned audio recordings. Reports surfaced of secret tapes from Diddy's events being presented in court. Will received a call, not from legal counsel, but from a former confidant. "Will, you're on one of those tapes. It was played. People are talking." The revelation shook him to his core. "I had no idea such a recording existed," he said, his voice heavy with emotion. "But that night, I couldn't sleep. I replayed every moment, the parties, the disorientation, the unease. It all made sense. I wasn't just a guest. I was a target." When he listened to the audio in a private session, the impact was devastating. "I hear myself laughing, but it's hollow. I sound impaired, altered." And then Diddy's voice, clear as day, saying, "That's how we break them in." It wasn't just humiliating. It was a violation. The prosecution confirmed that forensic audio analysis matched Diddy's voice on the tape to known recordings, and chemical residue on glassware seized from the event location suggested the presence of substances that could induce the disorientation Will described. That recording became the catalyst for his decision to testify. "I realized my silence was complicity in a larger wrong," Will told the court. "My children will one day read about this. I couldn't let my inaction define me." He contacted the prosecution himself, offering full cooperation. "I'm ready to answer anything," he said. And with that, he faced Diddy directly. "You knew exactly what you were doing. You recorded me, exploited me, and used it as leverage." Diddy, for the first time in the trial, appeared visibly unsettled. His earlier confidence replaced by a strained expression. as the weight of the evidence, tapes, messages, ledgers, and corroborating testimonies stacked against him. When Will's testimony reached the public, the reaction was seismic. Social media platforms were flooded with hashtags like Will Speaks and Diddy Trial, as fans and observers grappled with the revelations. Within hours, Will faced professional repercussions. Brand partnerships were severed, and a film promotion was postponed. Yet, he remained resolute. "I lost my voice long ago," he said. "Losing a contract pales in comparison." Meanwhile, rumors of additional recordings, audio, and potentially video sent shockwaves through Hollywood, with industry insiders fearing further exposures. Public relations teams issued cautious statements of concern, while behind closed doors, panic set in. The prosecution hinted at more evidence under seal, including witness statements from other unnamed celebrities and a potential trove of digital files still being decrypted, which could further implicate Diddy in a systemic pattern of coercion. Will concluded his testimony with a poignant gesture. He produced a photograph of himself from 2004, a younger, unburdened version of the man before the court. "This is who I was before those events," he said, holding it up. "I've lost sight of him over the years." Turning to Diddy, he spoke with quiet resolve. "You built an empire on intimidation, masked as success and culture. You shattered lives for your amusement. You once boasted that nobody parties like Diddy. Well, nobody deceives like you either." With that, he exited the stand, his dignity intact, while Diddy sat motionless, the weight of the accusations and the mounting evidence hanging over him. So, what's the moral of this circus? Hollywood's glitz is just glitter on a dumpster fire. Diddy's parties weren't networking. They were blackmail boot camps. And stars like Will? They're not untouchable gods. They're gladiators in a rigged game, grinning through the trauma for your ticket sales. As for Diddy, his empire of excess might just collapse under the weight of his own sleaze, and honestly, couldn't happen to a nicer creep. Keep your eyes peeled. Folks, more dirt's bound to spill, and we'll be here with the popcorn, cackling at the downfall of these self-proclaimed party kings. Who's next to spill the tea? Place your bets.